When it comes to horse racing, you can never have too much information. With Twin Spires, you can place your bets with confidence. Whether you use handicapping insights, like our Brisnet speed ratings, prime power and past performances, the guidance of our experts' top picks, or just choose a name that catches your eye. Yes! No matter how you pick your horse, bet with Twin Spires. And now you can share the thrill with friends using our exclusive Bet Share feature.
Welcome back to the Twin Spires Racing Roundtable. I'm Ashley Anderson here with James Scully and Vance Hanson, back from a brief hiatus for Kentucky Derby week, which was especially exciting for Kenny McPeek and Brian Hernandez, who won the Derby and the Oaks. We're going to talk both of those races, plus some other stakes action at Churchill Downs. And Vance, I'll start things off with you. Let's talk the 150th running of the Kentucky Derby, won by Mystic Dan. What were your thoughts on that race?
Well, it was certainly the most exciting finish to a Derby that I've ever witnessed in person, and probably the closest finish between three horses in a century and a half in the race's history. And as the field entered the final half mile, I turned to a colleague while I was watching the race and I said, "Man, Mystic Dan is getting a great trip behind the leaders." And he certainly was sitting right behind that fast pace and ready to pounce one. And luckily he bowled his way through at the top of the stretch and got hugged the rail and was driving to the finish down the stretch, opened up a bit of a lead with Brian Hernandez. And I think that inside ground-saving trip certainly made a difference, as those spare few inches were the difference between a victory over Sierra Leone and Forever Young. And also, given the fact that he was much closer to that pace, also, it was no surprise that he was getting pretty leg-weary in that last furlong. And perhaps being a son of a miler in Golden's sense, a mile and a quarter might just be stretching his distance limitations. So we'll see if he can continue to run as effectively in some of the longer races, like the Travers Breeders' Cup Classic later in the year. But overall, I think my general impression is that he was a worthy winner of this race. Sierra Leone arguably is still probably perhaps the top of the class. He may have eked out a win in this race if he had been able to run more straight down the stretch instead of trading brushes with Forever Young for a full quarter mile. And I know there's been a lot of controversy whether Sierra Leone should have been disqualified and placed behind Forever Young. To me, looking at the head-on view of the stretch run, I just think there was probably an equal amount of brushing and bumping. Sierra Leone probably caused more of it than not, but the opportunity to claim foul was there, and the connections of Forever Young chose not to take it. So Sierra Leone, Forever Young, I think, running second and third. I think that was keeping it the way that was, I think, was probably the right move. Quickly, two other horses I'll mention. Catching Freedom, was my top selection. He ran an okay fourth in this race. He simply might be a cup below the top three. He just wasn't good enough. And he got the same kind of pace set up that the second and third didn't. He just didn't fire as good of a shot. And then finally, Fierceness, the 3-1 favorite. He broke a step slow, and I think that certainly cost him at the start and through the first quarter mile, and he was on top of that pretty fast pace. And the bottom line with Fierceness is that he lacks reliability in what he has on talent on his best day. James?
Yeah, I'll echo. I thought that finish was totally befitting the 150th running of the Kentucky Derby. It was really exciting, and it didn't go my way from, selecting standpoint because I wasn't high on Mystic Dan, but I thought it was just a great race to watch, and like I said, very, very thrilling. Of course, I'll mention the great ride that Brian Hernandez Jr. Vance pointed out the highlights. I thought he did a great job getting back to those same tactics that he used in the Southwest, where he was saving ground on the inside. He launched an inside move into the stretch and, had a burst of energy once he straightened for home, and that proved to be the difference. His two rivals to his outside never really came close to making any contact with him while they were leaning all over each other, especially Sierra Leone. And I thought it was a tough beat for the supporters of Forever Young and Sierra Leone, but they had to get past the horse, and they couldn't get past him. So I give Mystic Dan plenty of credit. Obviously, we'll see about his next start. I think he's barring like some physical setback. I fully expect him to be in the Preakness field. I've never seen Kenny McPeak pass up the opportunity. And to me, Mystic Dan has a much better chance of winning the Preakness than he would the Belmont too. I mean, even though the Belmont is 1.25 miles, he's going to have these horses laying in wait. He's fit. He's strong right now, and I wouldn't sell him short off this performance because he's just come a long way since his juvenile season. He wasn't very good last year. He was more of a front running type, and he's just improved by leaps and bounds over the recent months. As far as McPeak goes, he had already won the Preakness with the Philly Swiss Skydiver in 2020 and the Belmont with Sarava in 2002. But this weekend is going to 100% get him into the Hall of Fame. He completes the personal sweep. He becomes the first trainer since Ben Jones in 1952 to win the Oaks and Derby on the same weekend. Real feather in the cap for Brian Hernandez Jr., who, if you really talked about his best mounts in his career, you had to go back to 2012 with Fort Larned in the Breeders' Cup Classic. Now everybody will say Mystic Dan in the 2024 Derby for Brian Hernandez. And as far as fierceness goes, I mean, this is just a lesson. I mean, he's the only horse in like modern times to have never won 2 races in a row and be favored in the Kentucky Derby. And, you can make excuses for him, but I think if he gets to a clear lead, he might lead wire to wire. And if he has to run in traffic with other horses, he can't do it. Or at least he can't do it at this point. So that he's remained super talented in my eyes, but faulty in the sense that he has to have everything go his way to run his best race. So, like I said before, though, I do expect Mystic Dan to be in the Preakness in 2 weeks, and I'll be surprised if he's not in there, Ashley.
Well, fierceness, I absolutely am going to back next race because that's the pattern. Big win after a loss. So I'm sure we'll see that next time out. And Kenny McPeak and Brian Hernandez, just the third trainer jockey combo to get that Oaks Derby double on the same year. So very historic win for the 150th. I also wanted to note the 2 Japanese runners, Forever Young and Tio Password, finishing in the top 5. The Japanese runners are getting closer and closer, and I think we had that feeling with Forever Young. He was the best chance we've seen so far. Looked way better than Derma Sotogake and Mandarin Hero last year, and just beaten, well, he was just a nose behind Sierra Leone, who was beaten a nose by Mystic Dan. I felt like I had a lot of things right about the Derby, except for Mystic Dan. Once the track dried out, I kind of wrote him off. On a muddy track, absolutely, I would have felt more confident in him, but he ended up doing well on a fast track as well. And my exacta was Sierra Leone on top with Forever Young and Catching Freedom finishing second. So still kind of stings a little bit, but congrats to Kenny McPeak and Brian Hernandez, who of course also won the Oaks with Torpedo Anna. So James, what were your takeaways from the Oaks?
Well, let me just mention one thing real quick about those Japanese horses, too. I mean, everybody references Sierra Leone could have won if he had run straight in the stretch, and Mystic Dan got the trip. But make no mistake about it, Forever Young gets out of the starting gate a little bit better. I mean, he was just a way slow. I think that cost him. That was a negative that the other horses didn't have to deal with in the early going. And both he and Tio Password just couldn't get out of the starting gate. So, we'll see if they can break better in the future. Torpedo Anna brilliantly carried her speed, I thought, over that sloppy track Friday in the 150th running of the Kentucky Oaks. And, considering that this was just her second start of the year, her 5th career start, it really bodes well. Now, granted, she loves Churchill Downs and she relished these wet conditions, but I'm not going to take anything away from her. I mean, she trained superbly in preparation. Kenny McPeak told everybody that would listen, use the line, I'm bringing a, bear to the race. And you better have a grizzly or whatever. And he said he wouldn't be scared to run against males going forward. And that won't be in the Preakness, but the Haskell in mid-July will be an obvious target for Torpedo Anna. The fact is, she's won 4 of her 5 career starts, and that comes by a combined 26.25 lengths. I mean, she just doesn't get out there and narrowly win. She won that Oaks race by 4.75 lengths, and she's run the opposition into the ground when she's had the opportunity to do so. Now, she will have to get away from Churchill Downs in a sense. But one thing that really impressed me about this performance on Friday was when Ways and Means makes this run at her. I thought she was going right by her in upper stretch, and I loved how she had another gear, kicked away. We'll see it here in a moment where she kicks away from the 13 on her outside. And, she's bred to be a sprinter. I mean, she's by fast Anna out of a Warriors reward mare who oh, no, wait a minute. I got that wrong. Sorry. She's out of an Uncle Mo mare. Sorry. But she's by fast Anna. So there's a lot of speed on the top. And but she had 2 turns, 9 furlongs, no problem for her. She's still rightly raced and extremely promising, and I'm excited about her moving forward, Vance.
Yeah, she was very much a logical winner of this race, and she's actually been quite dominant in her 4 victories. I mean, they've been all by open lengths, and the one loss so far was 5 length or so defeat by Intricate in the Goldenrod. So, and that was coming off of a short rest, if I remember correctly. So, Torpedo Anna is a very talented filly. I do think her victory on Friday was enhanced to a degree by the sloppy conditions because quite a few other talented fillies in the field didn't. They seem to struggle over the surface, but I'm not taking away anything from Torpedo Anna. She's really that good, and I back pretty much everything that you've said about her. Just FYI, I thought ran to her workouts, definitely, simply second best on this day, and it'll be fun to see these 2 rematch at Saratoga during the course of this summer. I'll mention 3rd place finisher Regulatory Risk, who was a kind of a big long shot here for Chad Brown. I know after she had placed in the Gazelle, they were saying, oh, we're going to skip the Oaks and go straight to the Black-Eyed Susan. Well, they changed their mind, and it kind of worked out for them. I don't know if she's going to prove to be up to the class of Torpedo Anna and Just FYI this summer, but she does look like an interesting filly, possibly in a longer race like the 1.25 mile Alabama. And then finally, probably the 2 biggest disappointments in this field, Tarifa, the Fairgrounds Oaks winner, ran one of her worst races here, as did Leslie's Rose, the Ashland winner. I guess both of them weren't taking to the conditions, and especially Leslie's Rose, from what I understand. So I think both of them are capable of better down the road. Ashley?
Tarifa, though, she had run in the mud, so I thought we might have seen something a little bit better. I didn't have her in my top 3, but certainly thought the sloppy conditions would have given her a little bit of an advantage. Just FYI, I thought would have the upper hand on Torpedo Anna with the sloppy conditions because we hadn't seen Torpedo Anna on an off track yet, but she had mud in her pedigree. Thought she would handle it. And of course, she had raced at Churchill Downs twice and finished 1st and 2nd in her 2 prior starts. So much more logical, I thought, for her to win the Oaks compared to Mystic Dan winning the Derby. But yeah, a good filly here. So I expect more to come, but maybe Just FYI can turn the tables in the future. Well, we had a lot of other stakes action at Churchill Downs for opening week. So Vance, what else caught your eye this week?
Well, the horse that kind of kept me financially afloat for the weekend was probably the one I was impressed with, above and beyond that personal thing, and that was Cogburn, who broke like a rocket from post 13 in the Twin Spires Turf Sprint, and then wound up just dominating with a very nice stalk and pounce journey. Now, this was the 4th win in 5 turf starts for Cogburn. All 4 of them have been in stakes, and this was his the highest grade race he's won so far. Now, last year he won the Troy Stakes at Saratoga, and in that race he beat Caravel, the previous year's Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint winner, but also No Balls, who won the Twin Spires Turf Sprint earlier last year and then went on to win the Breeders' Cup at Santa Anita. So Cogburn came into the Twin Spires Turf Sprint with a ton of back class going for him. A lot of people, I think, were probably concerned about the outside post and the long layoff dating back to September, but he just proved to himself to be a really up and coming superstar in this division. So he looks like, to me, the potential U.S. horse to beat in the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint at Del Mar later this year. That's going to be over a little sharper distance of 5 furlongs, but I think he's going to acquit himself quite well, especially if he has some good prep races this summer, James.
Yeah. I mean, once Steve Asmussen switched into turf last summer, he's really like taken off, and he's just finding his best form right now. Cogburn, and you referenced that trip. I mean, in that Troy, he's like off the pace, and he showed way more speed. I thought he would run well, but I didn't think he'd be up on the front end like he was. But he was just real sharp from the start. My takeaway, my what else for this weekend is going to involve the Old Forester Bourbon Turf Classic. I was a big fan of program tradings, like Win in the Hollywood Derby last year. I thought that was the top performance by a 3-year-old turf horse, and he came back from a 5-month layoff on Saturday. I mean, he's obviously running against 2 heavy hitters that had a recency advantage, with Naval Power having run second to Master of the Seas in the Maker's Mark. And I'm very busy winning the Muniz Memorial. But he's the number 5 here. You can see him on the inside. Got away pretty alertly with Flavien Prat. Frankie Dettori got the 11 Naval Power right to his outside. And they sort of stuck in that position all the whole way around. And I just thought it was another real strong, positive step forward for program trading. I thought it took a lot of guts to make this inside move in the stretch, and turned out to just be in the stretch run a terrific duel between 2 really good turf horses. Obviously, Naval Power was coming off a second to Master of the Seas, but I don't see any reason why he can't continue to stretch out, whereas his stablemate Master of the Seas is pointing for a title defense in the Breeders' Cup Mile. Both program trading and Forever Anna, Naval Power, are going to be targeting races at 1 1/8 miles, 1 1/4, maybe even the 1.5 mile Breeders' Cup Turf could ultimately be their target. And the other thing I'll say about program trading is he's still really lightly raced. He just started running in stakes last year, and I think he's poised for a really big season at age 4 off of this. I mean, right here, I thought Frankie tightened him up too in the stretch. It took a lot of courage to get through this space and eke out this win, and I just couldn't be more encouraged. I was expecting him to come back with a real strong performance, but he had to do it. He had to prove it, and that really made my day as well. I was all in on program trading from a wagering perspective, and was very excited about that performance. Ashley,
We had a lot of very close finishes over the weekend, and
I wanted to call you Caitlin because I've been at the track all week, and I felt like, oh my gosh, sorry.
And Caitlin was on it. She had Mystic Dan. There's a video of her talking about the exact trip that Brian Hernandez had. So great job to Caitlin this week. And I'll talk about another close finish we had with Overcharge, who earned her first graded stakes win in the Grade 3 Unbridled Sydney this weekend. This is a horse our colleague Abby Huffman particularly is fond of. And Abby and I were down in New Orleans and got to watch Overcharged win the Paige Cortez Stakes by 12.5 lengths ahead of this start in the Grade 3 Unbridled Sydney. And the public ended up being on Overcharge as well. She was bet down as a heavy post-time favorite in this race. She went straight for the lead here, and Florent Giroux had picked up the mount in this race, and she held off a late charge by Secret Money here to win this race. And I'm not sure where she's pointed toward next, but certainly proved herself against open companies. She had been racing against Louisiana breds in several of her previous starts, and she now has a 5-win streak and has won 2 of her recent starts on the dirt, and then now 3 straight on the turf. So she can do it on either surface. A very good mare, 6 years old. Congrats to Shane Wilson and Connor Wilson for this win here. Very exciting to see a Louisiana bred by Star Guitar as well. And her full sister is Manama Gold, who could have been supplemented into the Kentucky Oaks now in Todd Pletcher's barn. So we'll see what's next for Manama Gold. And Overcharge certainly has a bright future as well.
I would say runner against males in the Jaipur on the Belmont undercard. I mean, female turf sprinters hold their own against male turf sprinters. I think she should be aiming for the premier turf sprints moving forward. I thought she showed a lot of courage in the stretch. I love that performance as well, Ashley.
All right, well, that's all the time we have today for the Racing Roundtable. We'll be back next Tuesday. And of course, our Twin Spires jury is back on Thursday with our best bets and fades. We'll see you then.
Don't you agree, Vance? Runner against males.